Welcome to Good Grief, the podcast where resilience meets reality. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Malone. In this podcast, we delve deep into the stories of individuals who've triumphed over tragedy, adversity, and trauma. In every episode, we bring you raw and honest narratives from guests who faced life's most challenging moments head on. Through candid conversations, they share their journeys of resilience, shedding light on the strategies, mindset shifts, and support systems that empowered them to rise above their darkest hours. Join us as we explore the profound depths of human resilience and discover how, even in the face of life's toughest trials, there can be light, growth, and yes, good grief.
Hi there, and thanks again for tuning in to this week's episode of Good Grief. You're probably wondering, what is this voice I'm hearing? This doesn't sound like Christine Malone. Well, it's not. I am Mallory McCollum, Christine Malone's daughter. And if you don't know already, we are actually a family-run company and podcast. So, of course, you know my mom, Christine Malone. She is the voice of Good Grief and the face, of course. But then there's also me and my youngest sister, Molly, who help my mom work on this podcast. So I wanted to jump on here today and share a little bit about some of the loss that has happened in my life. So when I was just 2.5 years old, I actually lost my dad to suicide. He took his own life. Him and my mom were separated at the time. And he, I guess, was just lost in whatever was going on and felt like there was no way out, and he took his life. At the time, it was me who was 2.5 and my older brother who was 4.5. So I won't talk much about my older brother. He can share his story when and if he's ever ready. Also, if you're interested in a little bit more of the background of some of the family events that happened around the time that this was going on, then I would go back and listen to one of the very first episodes that we ever did on Good Grief called Suicide Mourning the Loss of Memories. And in this episode, Christine Malone, my mom, interviews me, and we talk about the suicide kind of in more depth and the family side of what happened. But today I'm more going to talk about, growing up without a dad and becoming an adult, and then eventually having my own children and my own life events, and kind of just missing the fact that he's not here for any of them. So it branches off of mourning the loss of memories, of course, because these are memories that I don't have with him. But it's more about how, as time goes on, we have what's called these pockets of grief. So there are times when I'm completely fine, and then there are times when I'm not. And it seems that a lot of it is, correlates with life events. So having a kid, getting married, another family loss, any of that kind of goes together. So I just want to kind of share a little bit about what's kind of going on now and the grief that I have because of it. So the biggest one that came to mind and actually inspired me to make another podcast for Good Grief was the fact that I am 31 years old this year. And my dad was 31 years old when he took his own life. And that's a little crazy. I don't feel like I've lived anywhere near enough of my life. And to imagine him being in a place where he felt like he had no way out, or at such a young age, 31, that's nothing. And now so I'm living out my 31st year. And it hasn't been bad. It's going great. I have my lovely boys, 3 and 5. And parenting without a dad has been quite the roller coaster. Parenting in general is a roller coaster, but that's a conversation for another time. but parenting without a dad's been difficult. And I wish that he could be here to see them grow up. And I wish that they knew about him. Another one that has come up recently is sharing with my children about my dad, their grandfather, and how he has passed away. Obviously, I'm not getting into a ton of detail with them, and I haven't mentioned the word suicide. I don't really know when to talk to them about that. Maybe that's a question for my mom to get more information on, when she started telling my brother and I about this. I mean, I feel like I've always known, but I'm sure that there was a time when I didn't. I mean, it happened when I was 2.5. But recently, my 3-year-old's been very interested in the fact that, that Gaga, that's what we call our grandma, that's what we call Christine, that Gaga is my mom, and that blows their mind. And then they start talking about how, Grandma Georgina is Dad's mom and Papa Rich is Dad's dad. And they ask, who's my dad? And that's hard, because in that moment, what do you do? But I said to him, well, my dad, his name is John, and that's who you're named after. His name's Louis John. So that's where your middle name came from. And he gets very excited because his older brother, his middle name is James, which is his dad's name. So, he's excited now that he has an important middle name. Not that he didn't before, but, he's excited he has an important middle name. And so he starts asking questions. Well, where is my dad? Is my dad Papa Fred? Well, no, Papa Fred is Mom's new husband. My dad is gone. Well, what do you mean he's gone? Well, he died. It's important for me that they know about their dad, that it's talked about, because when I was a kid, I don't remember a time when I didn't know about my dad. My mom always talked about him, and she always told the truth, about what happened, maybe not the specifics of how it happened. I know that came out as time went on and I asked more questions. And I'm sure that my kids will start asking me questions more as they grow up too. So it's just another way, of making sure that he's not forgotten. I want to make sure that he still lives on, and, we're not in contact with his family anymore. That's a conversation for a whole different time. And we did go into a little bit of that, in the first podcast we did way back when. So if you're interested, you can listen to that and get more information. It's called Suicide Mourning the Loss of Memories. And it's one of our very first podcast episodes that we did few years ago now. But that gives more information on, the background of this. But I just mostly wanted to talk about, as time goes on, there are these pockets of grief where there's specific things that make you think about it more, make you sad more. And then there are times when you're completely fine and you're never really truly not thinking about the person. They're always there on your mind somewhere in some capacity. But it doesn't always affect you in a way in which you have to be, sobbing on the bathroom floor. There are these times when you're perfectly fine. So with all of this said, what are some things that I do to take care of my mental health, to help myself heal from these things that have happened in the past? Well, it happened so long ago. And I share that in our other podcast as well. It happened so long ago that, there aren't a lot of times when I am extremely sad. And when I am, it's very confusing to me because I'm thinking, well, why am I sad, or am I allowed to be sad because he left so long ago? But it doesn't matter how long ago you lost someone or in what capacity or how old you were or any of that. It doesn't matter. The grief is always there, no matter what. There's no making it go away. There's just coping with it and, maybe learning what to do when you might be feeling a little bit more sad than normal. Some things that help me are relationships with friends and family, going out on dates with my husband, having, regular time to myself. I'm also an artist, so I like to paint and draw and color. And then maybe just vegging out on the couch, watching TV, playing video games, being with my children. That really helps me as well. But find what works for you, because what works for me or what works for the next person may not work for you. So find the things that make you happy and remember the person. Don't try to forget them, because that's, in my experience, that's not going to help. All it does is build up a ton of emotion squished into one tiny place, and eventually it has to explode. And you don't want that. So talk about the person, remember them, look at pictures of them, cry. Crying has helped me so much. It may not help you, but it helps me, and it may help the next person. So let your emotions out, feel them, talk about them. My main advice for anybody who may be grieving the loss of a loved one, a parent, a sibling, anyone, is just to remember them and talk about them and feel your feelings, because that's ultimately what has helped me over these years. And so thank you so much for listening to my story today. And I appreciate you all. I wish you good health and happiness. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Good Grief. We hope that the stories shared today have inspired and empowered you on your own journey of resilience. If you want to dive deeper into the themes of trauma, tragedy, and survival, be sure to check out my memoir, The Day I Became the Spider Killer, a memoir of trauma, tragedy, and survival. In this book, I shared my own raw and honest experiences, offering insights and strategies for overcoming life's toughest challenges. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or listen to it on Audible. Your support helps us continue to bring these powerful stories to light and spread a message of hope and resilience. Stay tuned for more incredible stories on our next episode. Until then, remember, even in the face of life's toughest trials, there can be light, growth, and good grief.